You can take wood. Some of you asked why I didn't bring my truck. It's because Dave said he threatened to kill me if I towed that up here. But anyway, you can run any gasoline engine off of wood. 1 million vehicles were running off of it in World War II. Most Americans don't know about it. It's coming out. You've seen several of these wood gas trucks. But I've run various engines, various engine sizes. I can actually, the generator is a 1970 generator, and I can run my entire house. The entire retreat I can run off of this gasifier. There's no moving parts in a gasifier. It just thermally breaks down wood, biomass. This pulpit here would run, this is about 3,000 kilowatts of electricity. If I gasify, because it's nice and dry, it's oak, and the harder the wood, the more density, the more fuel is contained in it. 3 pounds of wood is equal to 1,000 watts of electricity per hour. And it takes a little learning the technique, but you can gasify and transportation, electricity, fun. I cook these little stoves that we have in our table. They're gasification stoves. I can't demo them inside the college, but they're great. We do all of our vegetable canning on that little wood gas stove. Big handful of pellets or wood will last an hour, get you through most canning cycles at 12,000 BTUs. It never misses the pressure, temperature. And so it's a great way to do your canning. Wood cook stoves, we'll talk a little bit more about those. Next source, hydro. Some of you, again, back like the ram pumps, if you got a good ram pump setup, you might have a good hydroelectric setup. There are they're impulse turbines called Pelton or Turgo wheels, and they're horizontal shaft wheels, and you can produce 10 times the amount of power with hydro for the investment than you can with wind or solar. If you have the right setup, you can produce 10 times the amount of power. Now it's just whether or not you can sluice or capture the water that you have and make electricity. It's an excellent option if you have the resource. Not many have it. Some other, making fuel, the old wood alcohols. There's ways to make stills. Anybody know how to make still in here? Anybody? All right, a lot of hands, all right. But you can make wood alcohol, you can make grain alcohol, and you can modify a vehicle. Most gas engines are 12-to-1 air to gas mixture. Running it on methanol, you're 9-to-1. You can change your carburetors out, you can run four-wheelers. If you could grow enough corn, you can turn that corn into a fuel that runs very nicely in a gas engine. Just, again, food for thought. This is something, it's on a space station. These are thermoelectric generators. How do they produce electricity on a space station? This is one of the ways, thermoelectric generator. They are used for heating, they're used for cooling. I have one that sits on a wood stove. You place heats on one side, and this is EMP proof. The heat from one side, the heat coming across the semiconductor produces a DC current. The greater the delta T, the greater the temperature change. You see, this is cooling, this is heating. In the center, you have this module, and off of that comes 12 volts. So no sun, no wind, I can put this on a flame, and I can charge a 12-volt battery. They vary in size depending on the number of modules in them. This is a really neat option. As a backup, if I need to charge that battery for, say, somebody has a CPAP machine, or I got to keep that refrigerator going, all I got to do is start fire. And with wood, I can make electricity.
That same device works backwards?
Yes, it does. Thank you. The same device is working backwards as a Peltier cooler. It's Seebeck effect. If you're going the one way to make electricity, it's a Peltier cooler. Some of you might have a Coleman cooler that has it has a Peltier TEG module in the bottom. It'll lower the ambient temperature. Whatever the temperature is in here right now, 75 degrees, it would lower it 40 degrees. It's another way to investigate refrigeration. Possibly taking that, I'm working on trying to get my root cellar colder using TEGs outside just to cool it off, so in the summertime.
Is it expensive?
Yes, they are expensive. But you can play around, you can go to Amazon and buy the TEG modules and play around with them. You know, run lights, you just put them over a candle, they'll run a light. And so they can be expensive. It's basically when you get into the cooling. The more you can heat and cool in that short, small space, the more power you can make. Okay, talked a lot about a lot of sources. You get a lot of things to make energy. What do you do with it? A lot of times you have to store it. And batteries as a whole, we could spend all day on batteries. I will not. All I'm going to say is a lot of people don't understand batteries. Batteries are like our body. They don't like to be too hot, they don't like to be too cold. And they like to be right around 72 degrees. And if you can take care of your batteries. Most batteries are discharged too far, too low. And like I said, that few batteries die a natural death, most are murdered. And that is the case. So get educated on batteries. You can wire them, and however you can design a 12-volt system. You might start with 12-volt, step up to a 24-volt, maybe a 48-volt. The higher you go in the voltage, the more efficient it is. How you get those voltages is just a question of how you wire the batteries together in series and in parallel. This is a system you all need to have in by next week. It has hydro, it has wind, it has photovoltaic, it has generator. This is how, you can start we started simple. The Harbor Freight, $149, in theory does the same thing that this system does for an entire retreat. You have the batteries, you have the inverter, you have the charge controllers. And the other thing, when you get into big systems, you have extra power. And you can heat water, you can heat your home. These are called diverted loads. That's really the only thing that would be added to the system. You're getting into a very expensive, and then you can balance these. They don't have to be fully redundant. You can do a little bit of wind, a little bit of solar, a little bit of diesel, a little bit of hydro. You can balance the systems out, or you can go completely redundant. I want enough wind to run the whole thing, I want enough solar to run the whole thing, I want enough hydro to run the whole thing, and enough generator to do that. So, only thing I forgot to mention, there are a lot of good generators out there that are, if you're doing batteries, that just make DC power. They charge, they're propane DC generators, and so that's another option. Fuel, storage, diesel, propane, gasoline, aviation fuel, vegetable oil, and my favorite, wood. That's me, on my wood, but no. Wood, wood, why I'm on wood. You read Patriots? Remember read Patriots? How much wood did they have stored? 5 years. Everything and I read a book and I see water, I remember it. Everything with wood, I remember it. 5 years. The problem is you need to store wood. People just say, "Oh, just go cut the wood." The wood is green. You burn green wood, you're throwing away your time, your effort. You're throwing away half the energy of that wood. On the flip side, when you store wood longer than 3-4 years, depending on how it's stored, you're losing. Remember the wood gas? As wood begins to rot, it's losing BTUs as well. So be careful on how you store your wood. 3 years is really good. You get a good, maximize the energy of your wood pile. By the way, any new chainsaw, I didn't bring it with me here, but the Faraday bags, I got an extra electronic ignition, throw it in my Faraday bag, put it away. If my saw goes down, I'm done. Everything I do is with wood. I got my 2-man saw and I got Dave to help me. But, the chainsaw with a gallon of gas is again, 500 man hours. Okay, fuel storage, there's so many arguments and theories. How long does diesel store? Okay, it used to store for 10 years. I've stored it for 10 years with no additives. The biggest thing on all storage is temperature. You change temperature, you're hurting your fuel. Diesel, when that diesel expands and contracts, every time it contracts, guess what it pulls into the tank? It pulls moist air, and then that condenses. The additive business makes a ton of money. If you control the temperature, you'll save yourself a lot of money. It's just the #1 factor in fuel storage, especially diesel. Do not let the delta T change a lot on the fuel. There are some neat additives. You need to check it. You need to check it for water. If it's taking water, you need to deal with it. You need to deal with that. You can add the algicides and the stables and the prids, and there's a lot of things that you can do with diesel. 2007, they went from 500 parts per million of sulfur to 15 parts per million. That's why you see ultra low sulfur on the tanks if you deal with diesel. That's fuel stinks. Sorry. It just doesn't last like the 500 parts per million. So if you can get sulfur and add it and figure it out, that's one way, but the diesel fuel is not what it used to be. Propane, indefinitely. Gasoline, it all depends. It's the worst of all the fuels in terms of storage. As you know, when you leave your lawnmower with gas in it at the end of the season and you want to start it up, or your weed eater again in the spring, it gums up everything, it breaks down, it varnishes everything up. A solution I've been thinking about is aviation fuel. You can go buy, I can go to the local Pickens Airport and buy 100 LL low lead aviation fuel, put that in your chainsaws, in any motor without any engine without a catalytic converter. And that's a great option. They're not legally allowed to sell it after 5 years, which means it's still good. Now you're dealing with aviation fuel, so they say the rule of thumb, 1 year is it. But that for those that stay low to the ground like myself, it's not a problem. It's not going to be a problem in my chainsaw for 5 years. It's not going to be a problem in my four-wheeler for 5 years. So if you're looking for a gasoline storage option, though you're going to pay $1 more a gallon, maybe, then go with the avgas. Vegetable oils, 6-7 years. It depends on who you read, and you know, my own testing, I've stored diesel for 10 and run every bit of it through my generator. So temperature control. Temperature control on your food, on your batteries, on your fuel. Everything comes down to an environment to store things in.